That's it. That's it. Let's go. Practice fast.
Back here at Camp Dolphins, team with a couple of practices today, one in the morning and another in the afternoon. Between practices, the head coach, Tony Sparano, met with the media. One of the very first things he talked about was an interesting one, all of the different ways a player can make this team.
One of the first things I do with the team when they show up is I go through the ways that you can make this football team with them. Okay? And I'm very clear with how you make this football team, and every time I do it, the very last area is special teams. It's the last area, but I spend the most amount of time on it because this is really where I start. In some situations, I could start to form my vision for this player in those areas. You know, at least it gives me a good idea of, hey, this player can clearly play two teams for me, so I'm going to get 10 to 11 plays. Never mind offense, defense. This player can play four, teams for me. I got 25 plays out of this guy.
All kinds of talk throughout the preseason, of course, about the new wide receiver, Brandon Marshall. Today, the coach addressed how Marshall's presence helps the tight ends, gave a pretty good football 101 lesson as well.
Brandon Marshall, when you bring a player like this in, to double cover some of these players, okay, it usually ends up being some type of a shell look. Now all of a sudden, instead of 3 of them back there, there's 4 of them back there, so there's only 7 in the box. And the middle of the field, when we're creating this 2-deep shell now, is open. There's access. He can gain a little bit more access that way. He can work the middle. It's happened out here in practice a little bit. We've seen it even in some of these periods.
So a good explanation there about how one of the offensive newcomers will help open things up. Meanwhile, as for a defensive newcomer, the coach continued his high praise for linebacker Carlos Dansby.
I always had a high opinion of Carlos as a player playing against him. I've already said this, his range, all these things, he's hands on the ball, he makes a lot of plays. But there's some things that have jumped out at me out here, having him on my team now, and this has been more the physical end of things. This guy, for a guy his size, is really a physical player, and he really can run and cover a lot of ground fast. So when you see a player that big running that fast and covering that kind of ground at his position, that's a pretty intimidating thing. And I think that, I really think this guy could be pretty good, and I think that he gets that. In other words, he doesn't come out here every day thinking that he's already as good as he could be. I think he comes out here every day and he's curious about some of the answers, and that's a good quality to have.
That's the very latest from Camp Dolphins. Be sure to check back throughout the day to MiamiDolphins.com and theFinsiders.com for the very latest.